I still remember the day I stumbled upon Poppy Playtime like it was yesterday. As a child, I had always been fascinated by the abandoned factory that loomed on the outskirts of our town. The locals whispered about the strange occurrences and unexplained noises that emanated from within its crumbling walls. But I didn't believe them. I was drawn to the place like a moth to a flame, eager to uncover its secrets. My friends had always warned me away, but I couldn't shake off the feeling that there was something amazing waiting for me inside those decaying halls. As I approached the factory, the air grew thick with an eerie atmosphere. The once vibrant colors of the faded signs and advertisements seemed to mock me, their peeling paint and rusty hinges a grim reminder of neglect and abandonment. I felt a shiver run down my spine as I pushed open the creaking door and stepped into the darkness within. At first, all was quiet, but as I ventured deeper into the factory, the silence began to unravel like a thread pulled from a sweater. Footsteps echoed through the corridors, making me spin around, but there was no one in sight. The air vibrated with an otherworldly energy, and I felt eyes upon me, watching my every move. It was as if the very toys that lined the shelves were waiting for me, their glassy stares piercing through the gloom. And then, suddenly, the lights flickered to life, casting a warm glow over the factory's interior. I blinked in surprise as the shadows retreated, revealing rows upon rows of colorful playthings. Plush animals, dolls, and balls that seemed to grin at me with an unsettling familiarity. It was then that I realized why this place had been my childhood obsession. Poppy Playtime was a world where fantasies came alive, and nightmares lurked in every corner. I spent hours exploring the factory, my footsteps echoing off the walls and shelves. Every now and then, I'd stumble upon strange messages scrawled in red paint on the surfaces. "Play with us," "We're waiting for you," or simply, "Poppy Playtime." At first, I wrote it off as the work of some bored teenager, but the more I saw them, the more I felt an unsettling presence lurking just out of sight. The air seemed to thicken with anticipation, making my skin crawl. Every creak of the floorboards or rattle of the toys made me jump, but I couldn't shake off the feeling that I was being watched. My imagination ran wild, conjuring up images of sinister forces at work within these walls. But I tried to brush it off as mere paranoia. After all, this was just an abandoned factory, right? Still, the messages seemed to seep into my subconscious, echoing in my mind like a mantra, "Play with us." I began to wonder if there was more to Poppy Playtime than met the eye. Maybe these toys were more than just inanimate objects. Maybe they held secrets and stories that only came alive when no one was looking. The thought sent shivers down my spine, but I couldn't help feeling drawn to the enigma. As the sun began to set outside, casting long shadows across the factory floor, I realized it was time to leave. But as I turned to exit, I caught a glimpse of something that made my heart skip a beat. A small porcelain doll perched on a shelf, its glassy eyes fixed intently upon me. I stumbled upon an old recording equipment in the factory's storage room, hidden away behind a stack of crates. As I plugged it in and played back the first tape, my heart sank. The voice on the other end was that of a former employee, detailing the horrors they faced while working at Poppy Playtime. The words sent shivers down my spine as I listened to their accounts of strange occurrences and unexplained events. The tape was titled "The Last Day," and it told the story of how the factory's owner, Mr. Higgins, had begun to change. He became increasingly paranoid and isolated, locking his employees in the factory at night and forcing them to play with the toys until they were exhausted. The more I listened, the more I felt a sense of unease settling in. It was as if the voice on the tape was speaking directly to me, echoing my own feelings of discomfort and fear. The recording ended abruptly, leaving me with more questions than answers. Who had made these recordings? Why had they left them here? And what had happened to Mr. Higgins and his employees? I played back the remaining tapes, each one revealing a new layer of terror and desperation. There were whispers in the darkness, screams echoing through the corridors, and the sound of toys being manipulated by unseen hands. The last tape was the most disturbing of all, a voice whispering, "Play with us," over and over again, until it became a maddening mantra that haunted me long after I turned off the equipment. I knew then that I had to leave Poppy Playtime behind, but a part of me was drawn back in, compelled by some unseen force to uncover the secrets hidden within these walls. As night fell, the toys began to stir. At first, it seemed like a mere trick of the light or a product of my own imagination, but soon they realized that the toys were moving on their own. The air was filled with an unsettling silence, and the darkness seemed to pulse with malevolent energy. I felt a chill run down my spine as I watched the toys creep off their shelves and begin to explore the factory. They moved with an unnatural gait, their plastic bodies gliding across the floor with an eerie smoothness. The lights flickered and dimmed, casting long shadows across the walls as the toys continued their slow and deliberate march towards me. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, my breath coming in short gasps as I tried to process what was happening. The toys seemed to be drawn to me, their movements becoming more rapid and agitated as they approached. I raised my hands, trying to ward them off, but they simply passed through my fingers like mist. The air was filled with the sound of whispers, soft and raspy, and I could feel the words being spoken directly into my ear. "Play with us," they seemed to be saying. "Join us in our game." I tried to step back, but my feet seemed rooted to the spot. The toys surrounded me, their cold plastic bodies closing in on me from all sides. I was trapped, with no escape from the malevolent force that was driving them towards me. As I ventured further into the factory, I stumbled upon a hidden room containing disturbing memorabilia from the factory's past. The evidence uncovered was of human experimentation, gruesome injuries, and twisted games designed to drive people mad. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was as if the toys had been created in a twisted laboratory, designed to manipulate and control humans. The walls were lined with old photographs, depicting workers in lab coats performing strange procedures on children who looked eerily similar to the toys. I saw notes and journals belonging to Mr. Higgins, detailing his obsession with creating the perfect toy. He believed that by studying human behavior and psychology, he could create a doll that would be irresistible to children. The more I read, the more I realized that the toys were not just inanimate objects. They were living, breathing entities designed to torment and destroy. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me as I gazed upon the twisted designs and experiments. It was then that I heard the sound of laughter echoing from the room's center. The toys had gathered around something, their bright plastic bodies glowing with an otherworldly light. Suddenly, they began to move in unison, their movements choreographed like a twisted dance. I knew then that I had to escape, but as I turned to leave, I felt a cold hand grab my arm, pulling me back into the room. The toys surrounded me once more, their eyes glowing with an evil intensity. This time, there was no escape. As I delved deeper into the factory, I began to experience strange visions and nightmares, hinting that they were being drawn into some twisted game. The lines between reality and fantasy started to blur, and I found myself questioning my own sanity as the toys seemed to whisper eerie whispers in my ear. I stumbled upon a room filled with old laboratory equipment, and on the walls I saw scribbled notes and cryptic messages that made my skin crawl. The words Project Playtime were etched into every surface, accompanied by diagrams of twisted games and experiments designed to manipulate human behavior. I felt like I was trapped in some kind of bizarre dream, where the toys were the only reality. The air was thick with an otherworldly energy, and I could feel my grip on sanity slipping away. I tried to focus on the task at hand, but my mind kept wandering back to the visions I'd seen, the children, their eyes black as coal, playing a twisted game of hide-and-seek among the factory's corridors. The toys seemed to be watching me, their plastic bodies glowing with a malevolent intensity. I knew then that I had to keep moving, but my feet felt heavy, as if rooted to the spot. The visions grew stronger, more vivid, and I felt myself being drawn into a world where the boundaries between reality and fantasy were mere illusions. I was no longer sure what was real and what was just a product of my own paranoid mind. The toys seemed to be waiting for me, their eyes burning with an evil light. And then, everything went black. As I delved deeper into the factory's secrets, they led me on a wild goose chase through the abandoned halls. Each clue seemed to point to a new revelation, but also raised more questions than answers. The first clue was hidden behind a tattered curtain in a room that looked like it hadn't been used in decades. It was an old photograph of a group of children playing with what looked like early prototypes of the toys. Their smiles were genuine, but there was something unsettling about their eyes. I couldn't help but wonder if they had ever truly played alone. The next clue was hidden in a room filled with dusty filing cabinets and yellowed papers. It was a series of cryptic notes written by Mr. Higgins, detailing his obsession with creating the perfect toy. But as I read through the notes, I realized that they were laced with madness and paranoia. He spoke of being watched, of being hunted by forces beyond his control. The words sent shivers down my spine. The final clue was hidden in a room that seemed to be some kind of twisted shrine to Mr. Higgins' obsession. There were toys everywhere, arranged in intricate patterns on the walls and floor. In the center of it all was a large, ornate box with a sign that read, "For the winner." I couldn't help but wonder what lay inside. As I stood there, frozen in uncertainty, I heard a faint whispering in my ear. It was soft at first, but grew louder and more urgent until I could make out the words. They were a riddle, etched into my mind like a brand. The answer would unlock the secrets of the factory, but at what cost? I knew then that I had to keep moving, but my heart was heavy with fear. What lay ahead? As I stood there, frozen in terror, the toys began to close in on me. Their once jubilant faces now twisted into grotesque grins, their eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. I realized that I was trapped and must find a way out before it was too late. The silence was oppressive, and the air was thick with tension. Every creak of the floorboards made me jump. Every whisper seemed to come from all directions. I knew then that I had to keep moving, but my legs felt heavy, as if rooted to the spot. I scanned the room frantically, searching for an escape route, but there were none. The toys seemed to be closing in on me from all sides, their grins growing wider and more menacing with every passing second. I knew that I was running out of time, and that if I didn't find a way out soon, I would become the next plaything for these twisted creatures. The thought sent a chill down my spine, and I steeled myself for what was to come. With a surge of adrenaline, I took a deep breath and made a run for it, dashing through the winding corridors of the factory in search of a way out. But no matter how fast I ran, the toys were always one step behind, their grins growing closer and closer until they seemed to be right on my heels. I knew that I was being herded towards some unknown fate, and that I had to find a way to escape before it was too late. I fled through the factory, desperate for escape, pursued by an unseen force that seemed to be closing in on all sides. They stumbled upon hidden rooms filled with toys that seemed to watch them with cold, calculating eyes. Every step I took felt like a betrayal, as if I was being herded towards some unknown fate. The air was thick with tension, and the silence was oppressive. I could feel the weight of the factory's gaze upon me, as if I was being hunted by an invisible predator. The toys seemed to be everywhere, their plastic bodies swaying gently in the darkness like specters. I knew that I had to keep moving, but my legs felt heavy, as if rooted to the spot. The pursuit was relentless, and I could feel the force gaining on me with every passing second. I stumbled upon a hidden room filled with toys that seemed to be watching me, their eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. I knew that I had to escape, but my body felt like it was trapped in a nightmare from which I couldn't awaken. The force closed in around me, its cold, calculating gaze piercing through my very soul. I was trapped, and I knew it. The toys seemed to be whispering my name, their voices echoing through the factory like a chorus of the damned. I was lost in a world of terror, with no escape from the nightmarish visions that surrounded me. The force closed in one final time, its grip around my throat like a vice. And then everything went black. The protagonist stumbled upon a series of twisted games designed to drive people mad. They were forced to participate in these sadistic games, where the line between reality and nightmare was blurred beyond recognition. Every step I took felt like a betrayal, as if I was being herded towards some unknown fate. The air was thick with tension, and the silence was oppressive. I could feel the weight of the factory's gaze upon me, as if I was being hunted by an invisible predator. The toys seemed to be everywhere, their plastic bodies swaying gently in the darkness like specters. I knew that I had to keep moving, but my legs felt heavy, as if rooted to the spot. The pursuit was relentless, and I could feel the force gaining on me with every passing second. I stumbled upon a hidden room filled with toys that seemed to be watching me, their eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. I knew that I had to escape, but my body felt like it was trapped in a nightmare from which I couldn't awaken. The force closed in around me, its cold, calculating gaze piercing through my very soul. I was trapped, and I knew it. The toys seemed to be whispering my name, their voices echoing through the factory like a chorus of the damned. I was lost in a world of terror, with no escape from the nightmarish visions that surrounded me. The force closed in one final time, its grip around my throat like a vice. And then everything went black. The protagonist stumbled through the dark and twisted corridors of the factory, their heart racing with every step. Suddenly, they caught sight of a figure standing in front of them, its features seeming identical to those of Poppy herself. The figure watched them with an unblinking gaze, its eyes piercing through the darkness like a cold, calculating stare. The protagonist felt a jolt of shock as they realized that they were not alone in the factory. They had been playing into the toys' hands all along, and now they were face to face with their own twisted creation. The figure took a step closer, its presence filling the small space like a suffocating shroud. The protagonist felt a wave of terror wash over them as they realized that they were trapped in this nightmarish world, with no escape from the clutches of their own twisted imagination. The figure's gaze seemed to bore into their very soul, searching for any sign of weakness or fear. And then, in an instant, everything went black. When the protagonist came to, they found themselves back in the factory, surrounded by the toys that had been watching them all along. But something was different. The toys were not just toys anymore. They were people, with faces and eyes and voices. And they were all staring at the protagonist with an unblinking gaze, their faces twisted into cruel grins. The protagonist realized that they had been playing into their own hands all along, trapped in a never-ending cycle of terror and madness. As the protagonist faced their nemesis, they realized that there was no escape from the madness that lurked within the factory. The figure revealed a shocking truth. The protagonists themselves were a product of Poppy's twisted games, created to be trapped in this eternal loop of terror. The realization hit them like a sledgehammer, crushing their sense of identity and freedom. They were never more than a pawn in Poppy's game, designed to be manipulated and controlled. The figure's eyes seemed to bore into their very soul, revealing the darkest secrets of their own twisted psyche. The protagonist felt themselves being pulled back into the cycle of fear and madness, trapped forever in this never-ending nightmare. They were doomed to repeat the same horrors over and over, with no escape from the clutches of Poppy's twisted imagination. As the truth sank in, the protagonist's mind began to unravel, consumed by the crushing weight of their own existence. They stumbled backwards, their vision blurring as the factory around them seemed to warp and twist into a kaleidoscope of terror. The figure took a step closer, its presence filling the space like a cold, dark shroud. And then, in an instant, everything went black once more. When the protagonist came to, they found themselves back at the beginning, facing the same horrors and terrors that had haunted them from the start. They were trapped in an eternal loop, doomed to repeat the cycle of fear and madness forever.